This is a story of a regiment not just of men, but of a legacy carved in courage. A legacy preserved within these very walls at the Green Howard Museum in Richmond. Here, the echoes of their extraordinary journey still resonates. Joining us as we delve deep into the past of this regiment's history is Steve Erskine. Steve is the researcher here at the Green Howard Museum. Steve, nice to meet you.
Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. So, can you tell me a wee bit about the regiment itself and the connection with this building?
So this is the Green Howards. The regiment originally raised in 1688. So this collection here tells 300 years of history. Amalgamated in 2006 to today, we are the Royal Yorkshire Regiment. We've been in this building, as you can see on one of the plaques there, since 1973. Completely refurbished in 2014 to what you're going to see as you do your walk around today.
I've heard you've got some rather exciting items to share
We've
with
a
us
few
today.
things we're very keen to share with people. 14 Victoria Crosses, for instance, being one of the highlights. The only one awarded at D-Day, which I know you're quite excited to see. And a multitude of other things that really, I think fascinate an awful lot of people once they've come in.
Should we go take a look?
Absolutely.
So, Steve, I've noticed in this room in particular, I should say, this is sort of like a sort of officer's mess room. Can you explain to me what's the inspiration behind this room and who some of these individuals are?
This is exactly the look we were going for. Right. This is still used for events. The room is for hire, and we've had officers' lunches and dinner in here. So yeah, the room, like the rest of the museum, has to pay its way. Mm-hmm. We survive on what we win through the door. This particular chap, this fine-looking gentleman here, is Charles Howard. And in the days when regiments were named after their colonel, this was Howard's regiment. Unfortunately, there was another regiment who also had a colonel called Howard. And in a particular engagement in Flanders in the 1740s, there was massive confusion about which regiment was supposed to be moving. Mm-hmm. So the only way they found to distinguish one Howard's regiment from another were the colours of the facings of the other ranks' uniforms. This Charles Howard's regiment had green facings. They became the Green Howards. The other Howard's regiment had yellow facings. They became the Buff Howards.
Okay.
So you've still got the Buffs and you've still got the Green Howards, and it's nothing sexier than simply finding one way of telling one regiment from another so that it can coordinate the movements on the battlefield.
For over a century, the Green Howards honed their craft across European battlefields, from the Low Countries in the Peninsular War, where they earned their colours, proving their mettle against formidable foes. It was whilst walking around the museum, I noticed an interesting item from the Battle of Waterloo, linked to one of the biggest figures of the Napoleonic Wars. Steve, as we've been walking around, the light had glinted off of this, and like a magpie, I was attracted to it. Can you give me a little bit of information about this item and its significance?
This is a snuffbox that was commissioned by Napoleon. He commissioned 5 of these to be made, which he gave to his predominant field marshals. And this one belonged to Marshal Ney, who, if anybody's ever seen that film of Waterloo, you know who I'm talking about.
Marshal Ney, referred to by Napoleon as the bravest of the brave. He led the French cavalry during the Battle of Waterloo, and following the battle, he was arrested and charged with treason by the French Emperor after he had joined Napoleon instead of arresting him as ordered. He was then sentenced to death by firing squad.
And Marshal Ney, this was taken from his carriage. It was captured on the battlefield of Waterloo by a member of a Guards regiment who willed it to his son, who subsequently joined this regiment. Hence, we have it here. But yeah, one of only 5 that we know of that were made. We know of one other which is in a private collection in France. But yeah, another unique piece of history connected to one of the iconic battles of British military history. And we have a fairly unusual piece connected to that, sitting here in Richmond in North Yorkshire.
Throughout the 19th century, the Green Howards saw action in a number of major conflicts, from the Crimean War, saw them endure a brutal winter from 1854 to 1855, and later the horrors of the Indian Mutiny of 1857. The deployment across the vast British Empire, from the arid plains of India to the dusty veldt of South Africa during the Boer War, proved their adaptability and resilience. These professional soldiers, ready to serve wherever the Empire demanded, forging a legacy of unwavering discipline and courage. The dawn of the 20th century plunged the world into an unprecedented conflict. The First World War, a brutal industrialised slaughter, tested the courage of every soldier to its absolute limits. All across the country, young men fled to join the ranks of the British Army. This included many newcomers to the Green Howards. Amidst this unpredicted horror, individual acts of bravery shone like beacons. One individual in particular is Henry Tandy, whose story in the last few years has become quite controversial. Steve, one of the most famous people I've ever heard being spoken about and relate to the Green Howards is Sir Henry Tandy here. Can you tell me the reason why that is and the controversial story that's behind them?
Sure. So here he is. Here is his medal group. Private Henry Tandy, who we believe was the most decorated private soldier of the First World War. He was offered a commission and refused it. I think he just didn't want the responsibility for other people. But here he is. He's got the Victoria Cross, the Distinguished Conduct Medal, the Military Medal, and as you see from the oak leaf on the World War I Victory Medal, he's also mentioned in dispatches. Controversially, because he's known as the man who did not shoot Adolf Hitler. And we'll tell that story now. So here we are to tell the additional story of Private Henry Tandy, as if having a medal group of that size isn't enough. So this is a painting by an artist called Fortunio Matania, and it's of the 2nd Battalion action at a place called the Menning Crossroads, just outside Ypres in October 1914. And Matania was famous not just because he was a great artist, but because of the meticulous way he researched his pictures. So we know who all of these officers are and their subsequent fates. He wrote to people and said, who were you standing next to? Where were you exactly? So the Germans are coming down this road here. As you can see, the machine gun positions holding this position. And this man here, with the wounded comrade on his back, is Private Henry Tandy. So you've got a medal group, you've got a significant painting, but that's not all. The story goes that in 1938, when Chamberlain went to visit Hitler at Berchtesgaden, when they went into his private study, there was a copy of this painting on the wall. And it was quite a famous painting in its day, as it still is. So people recognised it, and they asked Hitler, well, why have you got that? And Hitler, in a great flourish, apparently walked over to the picture and said, that man there had me in his sights and didn't pull the trigger. They came back, they got in touch with Tandy, and Tandy admitted, if I had a wounded German, I didn't pull the trigger, I let them live. And as you probably know, Hitler was wounded twice during the First World War. So, having survived the First World War, he lived through the Second World War, Henry Tandy, to be stopped in the street by people who had lost loved ones in the war and blaming him for their loss. If you'd pulled the trigger, my husband, my son would still be here. So he lived with that monkey on his back all of his life, to be known as the man who didn't shoot Hitler. Someone has since done quite a bit of research on the story. 2nd Battalion, the Green Howards, 16th List Regiment that Hitler was in, and it turns out it's absolute rubbish. The two units were never anywhere near each other. And as Tandy himself said, well, I wouldn't have known who he was anyway. So there is no substance to the story. But I think what's interesting, it's kind of a modern day internet phenomenon. Once you've published a story, it becomes truth. And the more people that reply, the less people question whether or not it was ever true. And that is what Tandy stood with. He became known as the man who didn't shoot Hitler about a story that has no substance whatsoever.
It's a great shame because, as you've mentioned, they've had all these people that have been coming up to him, harassing him and blaming the Second War on him. You can only imagine the weight of the grief that would have been on his shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even if it was Adolf Hitler, at the end of the day, the man was showing a bit of humanity,
a bit of compassion,
at
whatever.
a dark time.
But again, the guilt he must have had. And no little anger as well. Why am I being blamed for this?
How was he meant to know what was meant to happen 20 years later?
Exactly. But, you know, as a one-dimensional thing, a painting that has all those layers of stories, it's a great piece that we can engage people with on so many different levels, not just the art, the story, the military action, it's all there.
But even the work that's been put in for the artwork itself, to spend that amount of hours and finding out exactly who everybody was, where they were standing at that one time.
Yeah. We open up and we close, and there's a set routine of taking temperatures and everything. So we walk past this every day. And we recently had someone in who did some close-up photography of it. And it's only then you say, oh, how come I haven't seen that? So the tattoos on the soldier's arm, the little bottle sitting on the box.
The chap here with the Boer War.
Absolutely, and the detail, you know, of the weaponry, etc. And just the life, capturing the movement in that explosion. Phenomenal piece of work. And it's a little village called Petit Cruisec. And if you go and stand there at that crossroads and hold that up, you know exactly where you are.
They fought in almost every major engagement, from the desperate defence at the First Battle of Ypres to the unimaginable carnage at the Battle of the Somme, where thousands of British lives were lost in a matter of hours. They endured the mud and gas of Passchendaele and the relentless enemy offensive in 1918. The statistics are chilling. Over 8,000 Green Howards were killed during the Great War, their names forever etched into the landscape of France and Flanders and other parts of the conflict, and here in solemn halls of their museum. Sometimes the very tools of destruction became symbols of triumph. This captured German machine gun, a deadly relic of the trenches, stands as a testament to the ferocious close-quarter fighting our soldiers endured. Steve, I love my firearms as much as any historian does, and of course, as soon as I seen this, I just had to raise the question, what's the story behind this German machine gun?
Okay, so here we have standard German Maxim 08 machine gun, and this was captured by the 8th Battalion of the Yorkshire Regiment, as it was in the First World War, at Contalmaison on the Somme on July the 10th, 1916, at a place called Horseshoe Trench. The battalion attacked around there. 5 days previous to that, they'd been in action in the same location, and that is when Lieutenant Donald Simpson Bell lost his life and was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross, the only professional footballer to win the Victoria Cross. So it's got a resonance, it's got a connection, but I think it also, again, like the Tandy picture, it has a number of different layers to it. So apart from it's a firearm, it's a piece of technology that did the damage during the First World War. Another feature here that we've used is the manufacturer. This is a company called Dürkop, and prior to the First World War, they made sewing machines.
No.
So I think this is an example when you talk about total war, when you talk about a society gearing up for total war, this is an example of that. We've gone from sewing machines to machine guns. As you probably know, not exactly light. You've got to move this on a regular basis, about 152 pounds, 400 to 500 rounds per minute, 250 rounds in a belt, and a good accuracy over about 2,000 yards. So again, this is the thing that's really doing the damage during the First World War, this and high explosive.
How many men would you reckon would be crewed in this one machine gun?
There'd be a crew of 4 for this. So you would have one carrying the gun, one carrying the sled, one carrying the ammo and the water and the toolbox, and then you've got usually another guy acting as your sight man. And again, one of the misnomers about operating this kind of kit is they just sat there and did this. Now they did in many positions, but in open field, you fire this and then move it, fire it and move it, because as soon as the opposition know where you are, because they know the damage you can do, they're going to drop everything they can on you. So again, that's why you've got the team. Pick it up, move it, fire it. Pick it up, move it, fire it. Constant fire and movement, we think, is a relatively new concept. But that was what was happening then.
So you had to be fit for the job.
You certainly had to be fit for the job. As I mentioned when we were off camera, we had to move this. We had an exhibition in this space. Not doing that again.
Well, at least you had hands-on experience.
Absolutely, yeah. It got me, an empathy. Genuinely, it's not until you handle stuff like this, as you know, that you start to think, oh, hang on, there's an whole series of questions now being raised in my mind once I can understand what the weight of this is. And again, one of the things I often get people, these pads, what are they for? And everybody, it's to protect your legs. No, it's to protect your shoulders. Because when you carry that sled, you invert it. And again, people go, oh, right, didn't understand that, didn't know that. Great stuff. The more we can try and do that, and the more questions people raise about the things that we have, that's why these things are here. So people can come in and ask us questions. And sometimes we don't know the answer, and people supply that, and that's great.
It's just incredible the kind of story that you can get behind these sort of items, because people that don't know or aren't interested will just look at this and go, oh, it's just a machine gun. But it's not just a machine gun. No. It's linked to all these important events. Exactly. It's linked to these people, the blood, sweat and tears that have went to operate in this. How at one point it was an innocent company making innocent items. It highlights the sheer volume of the Great War, from being so innocent, making sewing machines, and now making weapons of destruction. And
I think, just in the short time you and I have been talking, I think you're a man who gets that kind of thing. That you look at this and I think about the person in the factory who put the rivets in when it was made. What did they do? Where did they go home to at the end of a working day? But as you say, it's about a time and a place. It's about a reflection of society. Or, if you're interested just in that, it's about the development of weapons. The need is driving the development of this.
The Great War left a huge mark on the Green Howards, as it did on a whole generation. Yet, even as the world mourned, the spirit of the Green Howards endured, preparing for the next, even greater challenge. Barely 2 decades after the war to end all wars, conflict erupted again, on a scale even more vast and devastating. The Second World War saw the Green Howards once again deploy across the globe, from the sun-baked deserts of North Africa, through the fierce fighting in Sicily and Italy, to the ultimate test, the D-Day landings in Normandy. It was on that fateful day, June 6th, 1944, that one Green Howard would etch his name into the annals of military history, performing an act of heroism that defies belief. So Steve, this has got to be the one that I'm most looking forward to, because it's not every day you have the honour to have something like this placed in front of you. Can you tell me about the history of Stanley Hollis and what is it that he done in order to get the only VC of D-Day?
Yeah, pleasure. So Stan Hollis was born in 1912 in Middlesbrough. His family moved over to the coast and opened a fish and chip shop at Robin Hood's Bay, and Stan worked there for a while, started a career in the Merchant Navy, doing the Africa run, caught black water fever, quite seriously ill for a time. That ended his maritime career, and in 1939 he enlisted into the Green Howards, and he joined the 6th Battalion, which recruited over at Middlesbrough, and he served with them right throughout the Second World War. Served at Dunkirk, North Africa, Sicily, and then D-Day. And this is, as you rightly said, the only Victoria Cross awarded for the D-Day landings. And on that particular day, his citation lists 2 actions, although arguably there was a third, but the 2 actions that are usually mentioned. So they've landed on Gold Beach, 6th Battalion with the 7th Battalion following later. They go up into the village of Vers-sur-Mer, where there is a German gun position called the Fleury Battery. And Hollis is tasked with checking out reports that there are supporting pillboxes that have not been cleared. And as he approaches one of these, he's fired upon from inside. Without hesitation, he charges that position, gets on top, grenades through the slits, and captures the survivors that are in there. He then realises that there's a communication trench running to a second pillbox, and he does exactly the same there. So he's cleared a threat to the advance for the battalion. Later that day, at the village of Crepon, about 9 miles inland, he's told to check reports of a German artillery piece in a farmer's field. He takes 2 men in with him with a Piat, which, as you probably know, is a horrendous piece of kit and massively inaccurate. They fire the Piat at the gun position, and of course it falls short, but alerts the gun crew to their presence, and the Germans just pour fire at them. Hollis manages to get out, but realises that the 2 guys he took in are still in there. So again, no hesitation, picks up a Bren gun, charges straight in, firing it from the hip, and does enough to distract the Germans long enough so that the other 2 guys can get out. And when asked why he did that particular thing, he just calmly replied, well, I took them in, I'll get them out. And it's for those 2 awards, those 2 actions, I mentioned in the citation. I mentioned a potential third action, which was at the village of Cristo, walking down a road, and there's a sunken lane coming off to the left, and Hollis heard a dog bark. And you and I probably just walk past, it's just a dog barking. But to a seasoned soldier, dogs bark for a reason. And when he investigated, he saw a machine gun position at the top of the sunken lane. So again, without hesitation, he charged that. He was wearing Bren gun panniers for magazines, reached in to get a grenade out, had to take out his socks and his spare underwear to get at the grenade, and then launched it at the German machine gun position, realising as it left his hand that he'd forgotten to take the pin out. The Germans didn't quite notice that, thankfully, and they scattered, and he took that position as well. So, quite a man. Wounded a number of times, but yeah, deeply respected. And I think if you want to know the kind of character that Stan Hollis was, when someone asked him, what was your greatest achievement when you were in the army? He didn't mention this. He said his greatest achievement was attaining the rank of Company Sergeant Major, because then he was somebody to be reckoned with in Middlesbrough.
It's just these characters like Stan Hollis. It's the type of people that could turn a really bad situation into a victory in a matter of seconds. Yeah. To be fired upon initially on one occasion by a surprise occupied gunbox is enough to send any man to the ground, and rightly so, because your initial instinct is to hit the ground and remain there. But he's just remained calm. He's faced fear head on. He's went in there, eliminated both pillboxes, took the trench and went on and, as you mentioned, eliminated another machine gun position. Yeah. But there's no words to really describe it.
No, his care, attention and valuing of his men were predominant for Stan Hollis. There is a story, Padre Lovegrove of the 6th Battalion was at a casualty clearing station some days later, and he said he saw Hollis walk in, and Lovegrove went over to him, and Hollis just broke down in tears and collapsed into his arms because he'd lost so many of his men. And again, I think that tells you a lot about the man himself.
You could tell that he cared very deeply for his men in that case.
Yeah. And it, he when asked again, why did you do all of that? And he's simply replied, because I was a Green Howard. It was as simple as that. I'm sure there are people who've done many dissertations for PhDs examining why soldiers did what they did. People like Stan Hollis did it because their lads were there, and they took them in and they were going to get them out.
In this kind of day and age, we have all these sort of role models for young people to look up to. Really, in my opinion, this is the sort of person that young men should be looking up to?
I think you're absolutely right. I think Stan Hollis, for me, as a bit of a historian, is emblematic of the entire generation that coped with 2 world wars, an economic depression, and no welfare safety net underpinning them, and did what they did. Not for glory, not for gain, not for money necessarily, but because they were there and somebody had to.
I think that's perfectly summed up. The Green Howard's journey through Europe after D-Day was an extraordinary push towards the heart of the Third Reich. With every mile gain, they draw closer to the architects of the war. Within the Green Howard's Museum's collection is a number of items that appear innocent at first, but have a connection with the leader of the Third Reich, Adolf Hitler. So Steve, you've got a collection of items here that you're looking forward to showing us. Would you mind telling us what you've got here?
Sure, yeah. So what we have here are some items that were, what should we say, liberated from the Reich Chancellery in Berlin in 1945. We have a piece of red marble, which is from the map table in Hitler's office. So it's quite spooky to think about Blitzkrieg of 1940 and the campaigns against Russia in Stalingrad all being mapped out on this particular table. We know that this is the map table. The Imperial War Museum have a piece as well, and theirs has been verified by no less a person than Albert Speer, who confirms that this is actually not his desk, but Hitler's map table. And we also have a key, which is listed Führerzimmer, which I understand translates as leader's office. Außen, outside, the outside key for the leader's office. We'd love to think that this was Hitler's office, but as you probably know, there were lots of, inverted commas, leaders who had offices in the Chancellery, but nevertheless, we have that. And we have a piece of carpet that came definitely from Hitler's office in the Chancellery. So yeah, looking at it stylistically, if anybody ever thought that Adolf Hitler had taste, we now know different.
It's quite a, well, definitely a unique item to have in the museum's collection.
Yeah.
I think it's the first time I've ever heard someone own a piece of carpet belonging to...
You wonder how many tantrums and how many
I can
angry
imagine
episodes
there would have been a
that
few.
witnessed this, yeah. But we got it because there was a woman called Kathleen Hines who worked for the Women's Voluntary Service, now the Royal Voluntary Service. And she was invited on a tour of the Chancellery when she was stationed in Berlin. And she picked up a few souvenirs, which, through a very circuitous route, has found its way into the collection. And we obviously benefit from having it.
It's fantastic things to have, because, as you're saying, talking about the tantrums and whatnot, the things that these items would have seen, the conversations, the decisions that were made, it's just...
Yeah, it is. It's the reason I do the job that I do, is because someone took me to see pieces like this when I was 6 years old, and that awesome experience has never left me, even as an old man. To be up close and personal with things that have been so central to key moments in history is just superb.
Fantastic. Steve, thanks very much for taking the time to show us around the museum. I've got to say, it's going to be one of the best museums I've ever been in. Some of the stuff that I've seen here is absolutely incredible. It's just, I've been blown out the world with all the stuff that I've seen here. Quick question, though. Is there any events or any special occasions coming up?
What have we got coming up? So we've got, our current exhibition is about animal allies, the role of animals supporting the military. And as part of that, you'll like this. We've got an old fella who's got a complete and original World War I farrier's forge, anvil, and all the kit and caboodle to go with it. And he's going to set up outside and work that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that in action. And we've got a talk here about the Gallipoli campaign from a member of the Gallipoli Association. And again, unusually, we've got someone from Commonwealth War Graves coming to talk to us about how they lay out cemeteries, what kind of planting do they do in various parts of the world, so that's interesting. And we've got an evening in the museum, which I'm not allowed to give you the details of because it's a bit of a surprise for people who sign up. But yeah, we've got lots of different things going on, and again, it's all there online if people want to look at the website.
Oh, sounds fantastic. For the folk that are watching, how would they sign up?
Just go to www.greenhowardsmuseum.org.uk and have a look. There's plenty of information there about exhibitions that we've done in the past, things that are coming up. Our exhibition next year, fingers crossed, will be football. So we've done antiques, we've done animals, we're doing football. My argument is if we can get Great British Bake Off, we've done all of the popular themes from television. So we'll be minted. But yeah, anything we can do really to get more people to come in to support what the museum's trying to do and the stories that we're trying to get out there.
Brilliant. Sounds absolutely fantastic. I'd highly recommend to anybody to pop in here for a visit.
Thank you very
Again,
much.
Steve, thanks very much for taking the time to speak to us.
Absolute pleasure.
The end of World War II did not mean the end of service for the Green Howards. They continued to serve with distinction in various conflicts and peacekeeping operations around the globe. From the frozen battlefields of Korea to the troubled streets of Northern Ireland and deployments across the world, they remained a professional and vital part of the British Army. However, as the 21st century dawned, the British Army underwent significant transformations. In 2006, after 318 years of continuous service, the Green Howards, along with other historic Yorkshire regiments, merged to form a new entity, the Yorkshire Regiment. The story of the Green Howards is more than just a chronicle account of battles and campaigns. It is a chronicle of human spirit, of courage in the face of overwhelming odds, of camaraderie forged in a crucible amount of conflict, and of unyielding commitment to duty and to country. From the muddy fields of Flanders to the beaches of Normandy, from the distant outposts of the Empire to the familiar landscapes of Yorkshire, the legacy is secure. The Green Howards, a name synonymous with valour, honour, and a remarkable history that will never be forgotten. I shall now leave you to listen to a reminiscence of the poem named The Veteran's Poem, read out by Green Howard D-Day veteran Ken Cook.
They ask us why we do it, why we still parade. Now we are getting older and just a little frayed. It's not for the sake of glory or the medals on our chests. It's simply we are comrades who stood the final test. On the 6th of June, that fateful day, a day we will never forget, many a lad laid down his life and paid the final debt. So when you see a veteran, give the man your hand, for those medals upon his chest were won in a foreign land. And when God asks the question, "Who are you, my man?" I will proudly answer, "Sir, I am a veteran."